Hello, everyone, and welcome to Friends Life Care's Financial Symposium and the current session, which is titled Savvy Money Habits. This is actually the last of our 8 presentations over the last 2 days, and I hope that, if you have participated in a few of them, I believe you're going to enjoy this one as well. My name is Joe Connor, and I am Friends Life Care's Chief Financial and Administrative Officer, and I will be the moderator for this session. Before we get started, just like to go over some housekeeping information to ensure that you know how to fully participate in today's webinar. You'll have the opportunity to submit questions and any comments at any time during the presentation by typing them in the Q&A box. The presenters will answer all questions at the end of the seminar. So I'd like to introduce our 2 speakers today. Melissa Tosetti and Kevin Gibbons have been teaching Savvy Living through webinars and in-person classes across the United States. When they're not teaching, they spend their days working one-on-one with individuals and families to help them plug their financial leaks, streamline their spending, and create spending plans, and most importantly, teach them how to live within their plans. They've worked with over 675 clients in almost every state in the United States. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa.
Thank you. First of all, welcome to our Savvy Money Habit session. I'd like to start out by pointing something that you're likely very aware of, and that is that money moves so fast. The amount of financial transactions that we make in a day are more than we previously made in a week. On top of that, over the last 30 years, the advances in banking and technology have done very little to help. In fact, instead of simplifying our day-to-day financial lives in so many respects, banking and technology has complicated it. Money moves in so many different directions in so many different ways. We've got debit cards, credit cards, automatic payments, automatic renewals. It is chaotic at best and catastrophic at worst. Without strong money habits in place, we can feel like pinballs bouncing from one expense to the next, feeling as if we have very little control over our financial lives. As Joe said, my name is Melissa Tosetti, and I am the founder of The Savvy Life. And for the past 10 years, Kevin and I have worked with close to 700 individuals and families making over their day-to-day financial lives. In that time, we've had clients making $30,000 a year who were able to save money and still travel regularly. We've also had clients come to us who, despite making over $1 million a year, were living paycheck to paycheck. While income is important, it's what you do with it that's key. So what exactly is the Savvy Life? Well, I'll give you a more detailed explanation in a few minutes, but in a nutshell, living a savvy life is about building and maintaining a strong financial foundation while enjoying the journey by being very purposeful with how you spend your time and how you spend your money. There's a balancing act in taking care of our immediate and future needs, as well as our immediate and future desires. And that balanced life doesn't happen by accident. Your goals aren't achieved by accident. It takes planning, which when done right is part of the fun. And it also takes a very deep dive and education into the areas of your life where you do spend. And that's a very broad amount of categories. You've got groceries and dining out, travel and entertainment, clothes, the holidays, so much more. Being financially responsible doesn't mean you have to sacrifice the life you want today. Very often when Kevin and I present, it's to a mixed audience of those who are still working and those who are retired. The bulk of information that we're going to present today is applicable to both audiences. Some of the habits are targeted for those who are still working, but we've received feedback from retirees that they found that the information is beneficial to pass on to their adult children and to their grandchildren. Okay. So just as one quick reminder, as Joe mentioned, if you do have questions, if you could type them into the Q&A section in your screen, then we'll get right to those questions at the end of the presentation. All right. So let's start with our agenda today. We're going to introduce you to the Savvy Life philosophy. We'll explain how money affects everything and the implications of that. And then we're going to introduce you to the golden rule of personal finance, and then go into those 9 savvy money habits that you can then take and run with. What I'd like to do is start by asking a few questions to get you started thinking about how this information, the information in this presentation might apply to your own financial life or perhaps maybe someone that you know. All right, so we're going to do a little quiz here, if you will. So my first question, do you have a closet overflowing with clothes, but find yourself complaining you have nothing to wear? So too many clothes, nothing to wear. Next question, do you eat out or get takeout more than once a week because you don't have a plan rather than really wanting to go to that particular restaurant? So in other words, you're dining out more than you'd like. Next question, do you regularly walk into stores like Target or Costco to purchase one item and walk out pushing a shopping cart loaded with bags? Similarly, are you on a first name basis with your UPS driver who delivers your Amazon Prime purchases? All right, that's a question we've had to add in the last couple of years, right? And then the last question that I have for you, and this is truly the $1 million question, and that is, were you taught about money as a kid? I'm not talking about stocks and bonds. I'm talking about very simple day-to-day money habits. Now, that last question is something that Kevin and I have been asking for years, and we are not surprised when only a few people say that, yes, they were taught about money. The majority of us, myself included, were not taught personal finance either by a parent or through school, and so consequently, we have no money skills, no healthy habits for how to manage our money. This isn't something that I experienced firsthand. My parents are amazing, but they didn't teach me about money growing up. And so consequently, when I graduated from school, I got myself in a world of hurt financially. I ended up actually having to work an office job during the day and wait tables at a sports bar at night so that I could work my way out of debt. And unfortunately, once I became debt free, I still didn't have any money skills. And what ended up happening is I became very fearful that if I spent money on anything that wasn't an absolute need, I'd have to go back and wait tables again. What ended up happening is I ended up spending the next 2 years living in extreme frugality because of that fear. And it took me that long to finally realize that it wasn't more money that I needed. It wasn't more income that I needed. What I really needed was money skills. And it was at that time that I began to seek out that education. So in today's presentation, we're going to focus on the habits around those money skills, starting with the Savvy Life philosophy, which is to save money on the things that are not important to you so you can spend your money on the things that are important to you. So this is simply a matter of picking and choosing rather than spending with no plan. Now, to give you an example of this philosophy in action, something that my husband Paul and I are very passionate about is travel. That's a picture of the two of us in front of the Roman Colosseum, taken by my 8-year-old son at the time. So that's why the picture's just a slightly bit crooked. But you know, Paul and I, we decided a long time ago that's really our passion. That's where we want to focus our spending. And so we regularly look for areas in our life where we can streamline our spending so that we do have more money for travel. But there's one part of our life in particular where we made a decision a long time ago that gave us a larger amount of money to put towards travel. And that decision was around cars. Paul and I, we're not car people. It's not important for us to drive the latest, greatest vehicles. And so we decided that when it came time to replace one of our cars, we would invest in a nice, reliable used car. And the money we saved by not having two separate car payments, that would allow us to save for those travel adventures. And that simple philosophy has taken us on travels across the world, across the US and Canada. We've gone on cruises, regular trips to Disneyland, Las Vegas, Scotland, Orkney, then Italy, of course. But there was one trip in particular that really demonstrated for me just how powerful the Savvy Life philosophy is. Paul and I, we are both martial artists. In fact, Paul owns a mixed martial arts school here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And way back in 2001, he and I had an opportunity to travel to China, which is great. Anybody can do that. But the travel opportunity for us was to travel to China and train with the Shaolin monks at the Shaolin temple, which is really, really, really cool. In thinking about that trip, though, I realized that if I was still overspending, still didn't have, was still in debt, There's no way I could have afforded to go on that trip. But if I was still living in extreme frugality, if I still had that mindset, there is no way I would have given myself permission to go on that trip, and I would have missed out on a once in a lifetime opportunity. Identifying what's important to you lets you know when to save and when to spend, and that amplifies the power of every dollar. Now, what we've learned over the last 20 years of living this lifestyle and the last 10 years of writing about it, teaching it, and working with clients, we have learned that money affects everything. Like it or not, it affects everything. It affects where we live, what we eat, how we dress, what we do with our free time, what we can give back to our community. Because what you spend in one area directly affects how much you have to spend in other areas of your life. And it's that reason that Kevin and I teach personal finance from what we call a lifestyle perspective. So we're not just teaching the money skills that you're going to learn today, but we also teach smart spending or purposeful spending around your home, food, wardrobe, travel, entertainment, because in our work with clients, we have identified that these are the areas where people are most often overspending, but with the least amount of satisfaction because they're spending with no plan. So I want to be very careful and make sure that everybody understands that this is not a conversation about frugality. It really is about purposeful spending. At the beginning of this session, I promised you a more detailed description of what savvy living is and what that entails. So I'm going to give that to you right now. Living a savvy life is about knowing where you stand financially on a daily basis so you can make smart money decisions. It's about choosing to purchase only things that you love and that make you happy. When you go out to eat, it's because you want to go to that particular restaurant, not because there are no groceries in the house or there's no plan. It's about having a wardrobe made only of clothes that fit and look great on you. It's about enjoying your time off even more because you've planned for it and know you can afford it. And it's also about creating an environment in your home that is your own personal sanctuary, the place that you want to be the most. So with all this in mind, what is the first step to savvy living? Well, it's important as you move forward to understand that it is mathematically impossible to be financially successful if more money is going out the door than what is coming in. And with that in mind, every financial expert will tell you that the golden rule of personal finance is that you have to spend less than you make, which sounds very easy, right? It's just like the formula for losing weight. You eat less, exercise more, it's easy. And yet this is a really big challenge for so many Americans at all levels of their life. And part of the reason goes back to what I said at the beginning of this session. Money moves so fast, it moves in so many different directions that it's challenging to know how much you have to spend on any given day without getting yourself into trouble. Now, the good news is that that the 9 savvy money habits that we're going to introduce to you will help you get full control of your money, put that golden rule into play, starting with savvy habit number 1, which Kevin is going to introduce to you right now. So excited about you introducing it, Kevin. I was blurting out your name randomly.
Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everybody. So we have 9 savvy money habits, and the first one is pay yourself first. If you're not familiar with this phrase, this is the habit of putting money into savings, such as an emergency fund or 401k type account, prior to spending a dime on anything else, including your bills. Now, this really pertains to people who are still in the income earning stage of their life. If you're retired and living off of your investments, then this really becomes focus on living within your plan, which I'll go into in a minute. So let's look at the people who are still earning an income. When talking about pay yourself first, one of the first questions we get asked is, how much should I save? And the answer we often give to that is, it depends. Now, this is not a cop-out, but it really does depend. Everyone has a different financial situation. Income is different, expenses are different, the family structure is different, and the goals are different. So how do we try to answer this question? Well, if you're working with a financial advisor, then they can give you that answer based on what your overall financial plan is. If you're not working with a financial advisor yet, then as a goal, we recommend to consider striving towards the idea to save 20% of your income and spend the rest with abandon. Now, what we love so much about this idea is that putting 20% of your income towards your long-term financial goals, like building that emergency fund or retirement, will provide the bricks to build an extraordinarily healthy financial foundation. The rest of your money, after taking care of your financial needs and obligations, should be enjoyed. We'll talk more about those needs and obligations shortly. Now, if you've struggled saving anything at all, the idea of starting to save 20% of your income can feel overwhelming. But don't worry, this is an ultimate goal to be achieved over time. One of the things that we found in our work is that often being consistent in savings is challenging because we try to save too much at once. We'll go from saving nothing to trying to save 5, 10, or 20% without a plan. And that just isn't sustainable. What happens is we end up regularly having to dip into those savings accounts to cover our monthly shortfalls, and we feel like we're not good savers. That's not the case. It's just that we try to do too much at once without a plan. So how do we address that? The one tactic that our clients have successfully implemented to increase their savings is to do it in 1% increments. So for instance, if you're not saving anything at all, but you want to, then set your initial goal to save 1% of your monthly income. So if your monthly income is $2,000, 1% is just $20. That's the price of an inexpensive dinner out. Shouldn't be that hard, really. Now, I know that for some people, just saving $20 a month doesn't seem worth the effort, but the goal isn't just to save money. The goal is to build the habits and give yourself a situation where you can slowly increase your savings and increase the likelihood of your success. Here's the key. Once you've started saving that 1%, the next step is to make a note on your calendar for 3 months from now. At that time, you're going to increase your savings by another 1%. And every 3 months, you're going to do that so that by the end of the year, you'll be saving 5% of your salary. Now, that's really impactful. So 2 things can happen. You can save that and think everything is going great, in which case, if you feel that you can actually increase the savings for the next year and work towards that 20% goal. Or if you hit a point where you're finding that you're regularly having to dip into that savings again, just cut back 1% and then look at what you're spending on, look at how you can change that around to gain onto it. What are the keys to making this work? First, calculate the savings amount and set that up for an automatic transfer. Second, mark your calendar for when you're going to do those 1% increases every 3 months, and then build on that success. The whole idea of this habit is to take it slow so that you have a greater likelihood of success, you're building the good habits, and you're getting that positive confirmation that it's working. The goal is to automate the process, monitor it, and adjust it as needed. Shortly, we're going to introduce you to savvy habit number 8, which is the next step in helping you to easily increase your savings amount, achieving your ultimate savings goals that much faster. So now this is great for wage earners, but what if you're retired and living off of your investments? Well, first, I'm going to talk to you about a hybrid case. When my father retired after 30 years working for the General Telephone Company, he lasted about 6 months before he got bored and found another job. Now, he didn't really need the money, he needed something to do. So if you're in a similar position where you have your retirement income stream set up, but you're still earning a paycheck, consider saving between 10 and 20% of that paycheck. Now, you're not really saving for your long-term plan because you're already in your long-term plan. What you're doing is you're now saving for a specific purpose, like a travel fund or some other luxury that you can enjoy. Why are we doing this? Well, one, it's a good habit to keep, and it will help prevent you from committing lifestyle creep. You don't want to get too dependent on that income because at some point, like my father, you may decide that you really are done with working once and for all, and that money may go away. So in this hybrid situation, you're saving some money for a near-term goal, like I say, like travel or something. You're maintaining that good habit of saving. And then when you do finally decide to stop that second job, you don't have quite as big of a jump to readjust yourself. Now, if you're fully retired and living off of your investments and pension, then this habit really is one of just making sure that you're following that golden rule and spending less than your planned withdrawal every month. As Melissa mentioned before, one of the greatest challenges we face is that money moves so fast and it moves in so many different ways. There's so many ways we can access our money. We are literally drowning in currencies. There's cash, checks, online bill pay, auto bill pay, automatic withdrawals, debit cards, credit cards, PayPal, Venmo, Apple Pay, so much more. It's no wonder we have no idea how much money we're spending. It goes so many different directions, uses so many different types of currencies. A few years ago, we worked with an orthopedic surgeon in Washington State. And as we were working with him, he realized that for the past 2 years, he had been paying $200 a month for a personal trainer that he had stopped going to. He forgot to cancel the auto pay and he never reviewed his credit card statements and his spending. And this ended up costing him close to $5,000. The way to understand where money is going and to regain control of your money is to track your spending. Now, admittedly, this is something most people don't want to do, and we understand. However, it is the magic bullet for taking control of your financial life. It is a transformative habit, so it is well worth figuring out how to adopt. So this is our second savvy habit, is tracking your spending. What are some of the rules that we've come up with that we think really have helped to make our clients succeed at this? The first is to keep it simple. When it comes to tracking, there are almost a limitless amount of tools out there. There's youneedabudget.com, Quicken, Google's budget template, Tiller Money, an Excel worksheet, a notebook, and a ledger with a pen. The most important thing is to find a system that is going to work for you and then to keep it as simple as possible. Once you've decided on a system for tracking, equally important is you have to create the habit of tracking. Now, in his book, The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg explains the scientific process for creating a new habit, and that is trigger, habit, reward. So let's take an example of what we're going to apply this for tracking your spending. Your trigger, you get up in the morning, you start the coffee maker, you turn the computer on. The habit, now you track your spending. You go look at your checking account, you look at your credit card statements, you look at, if you're using YNAB or a spending tracking software, you go look at the report on that to see where you stand that day. You've completed the habit. Now your reward, you get your morning cup of coffee. And that is really important to wire your brain that you have a trigger to do something, you do something, and then you get some pleasure out of it. Now, I was very specific when I described this trigger, habit, and reward, focusing around doing it in the morning, because that is incredibly important. You want to do this first thing in the morning. As your day gets busy and you get overwhelmed, it becomes very easy to procrastinate. And if this is something that you're not particularly pleased or excited about doing, it becomes very easy to find other things to do. So do it first thing in the morning. Next is, if you're overwhelmed by the idea of tracking your spending, but you really want to do it, then consider just tracking what you want to change rather than everything. For most of us, we know what our rent or mortgage is. It's the same thing every month. For the most part, we know what our utilities are. It changes with seasons, but it's about the same thing every month. And you can't really change a lot of that anyway. So let's look at what you want to change. So that's typically just a few categories like groceries, dining out, and entertainment, and other discretionary spending. By just tracking those categories and then changing your behavior, looking on the results for that, you're simplifying the process. And this has helped hundreds of our clients take control of their financial situation. Lastly, if nothing else, consider just trying tracking your spending every day for 1 week. See if it's something that you can live with and that you actually start getting some benefit out of. And once you see that, then it becomes much easier to continue on the next week and the next week. And before you know it, it has become an ongoing habit.
All right, I'm now unmuted. All right, I would like to take over and now introduce you to savvy habit number 3, which is to set financial goals. Because a goal without a plan and a deadline is simply a wish. Now, I have an acquaintance that whenever I think about financial goals always comes to mind. This is somebody that I see a couple times a year. And whenever we see each other, the conversation about travel comes up, and he always talks about wanting to go to the island of Malta, which is where his family is from, and visit. He had never been there before. And as I said, this would come up just about every single time that I would see him. And it was a few years into this relationship that I started to realize he's never going to get to Malta, because whenever he talks about the trip, he always talks about wanting to do it soon. He has never actually set a date for the trip, a deadline for the trip, and it has been over 25 years and he still has not gone. So it really is critical for something that you do want to do, especially around travel, because that time can get away from us, that you do create that deadline. So I want to walk you through an example of what that could look like. And we're going to pretend like the world is normal, all right? And we're not living in COVID right now. So let's go with an example of a Mexican cruise, okay? Now, let's say that you do want to go on, you have decided, you've defined in advance that the cruise is what you want to do, your travel destination. So you've defined your goal. The next thing is that you're going to decide when you want to go. That is critical. So you're going to set your deadline. And for the sake of this example, we're just going to say that you're going to go 4 months from today, which would be about May. And then the next thing you're going to do is you are going to start doing your research. Okay, you're going to research all the costs associated with the trip, not just the cost of your passage, but you're going to research how much is it going to cost you to fly to the port where the cruise ship is docked. Or if you're driving, how much is it going to cost you to keep your car in the lot while you're gone? How much will you need in spending money? And so once you have all that information, from there, you're going to calculate how much do you need to save each month. That's the next critical step. By the way, I want to jump back for just a second. If done right, researching all the costs can be something that can create a lot of anticipation and enjoyment of that trip. So use it as have fun with that versus getting stressed out about it, all right? Because this is again, we're walking you through that, how to turn that goal into that reality. So you've defined your goal, you've got your deadline, you've researched your costs. Now you're figuring out how much money do you need to save each month in order to go on that trip. Now, if you start to do the math and you realize, wow, I can't save this amount of money in order to go by that deadline, move the deadline. Adjust the goal, because what you want to do is you want to set yourself up for success. So make it achievable. Now, a key tool for achieving large financial goals like travel is to set up a separate travel savings account, right? A dedicated savings account for that money. And there are a couple of reasons why. It will prevent you from accidentally spending that money on other items, which is very easy to do when your money's tangled. It will create momentum as you see that money grow. If you have money left over at the end of the month, it will allow you to capture those leftovers and physically move that saved money into your savings account, exponentially allowing you to exponentially get to that goal that much faster. And if nothing else, keep your savings goals, like your goal savings, separate from your emergency savings account. Okay, so your travel savings needs to be separate from that emergency savings, because they have two completely different purposes. One is to save for emergencies, one is to spend on goals. And then finally, stay motivated. As you're going about your days, keep your goal in mind. If you're trying to create a habit of becoming more purposeful in your spending, you can actually use that upcoming cruise as a barometer and simply ask yourself, you know, when you're in a store, do I really want to buy this, whatever this happens to be, or would I rather spend that money on my trip? Okay. So again, it's a fun way to help you to become more purposeful in your spending overall. The next habit I'd like to introduce you to is to create a spending plan. Now, Kevin and I very often get asked, what is the difference between a spending plan and a budget? Technically nothing. They both help you organize your expenses, letting you know where your money is going to make better spending decisions, and it lessens the surprises. We choose to use the term spending plan because we made a decision long ago to teach personal finance from a positive perspective, because for most people, the term budget feels like punishment, whereas the term spending plan is simply a plan for where you want to spend your money. Now, most spending plans, the spending plans that we work on, they focus on where your money is going to go over the next 12 months. We consider them living documents that ebb and flow as your income and expenses ebb and flow. In other words, one of the reasons that people get frustrated by budgets is because they're thinking of them as strict documents, right? But spending plans, they need to be adjusted every few months as your income and your expenses change. Now, for most people, their monthly expenses are very manageable. They're coming up monthly, they're routine, they're used to them. It's the intermittent expenses like property tax that isn't escrowed, or the spending around the holidays, which we just experienced, right? That has a tendency to throw us off. So as you're creating that spending plan, it's critical to ensure those intermittent expenses are accounted for. And it also, because they're accounted for, it also gives you time to save for those expenses if needed, which limits those negative surprises.
So if you get nothing else out of this presentation except for the next two habits, then I think that your time spent will be well worth it. By implementing this next habit, you will avoid what we believe to be the greatest robber of wealth in our current history, and that's the Goldfish syndrome. Now, the title of the Goldfish syndrome stems from the popular knowledge that a goldfish will grow to the size of its environment. We have a similar habit when we grow our cost of living with each pay raise. Now, that starts instantly enough. When we first get into our career, we get our first significant pay raise and we replace our beat up, unreliable cars. Next, maybe a year or two down the line, we buy our first house. But then as our raises increase, we get nicer cars, bigger houses, boats, motorcycles. All of these things come with a monthly bill that increases our cost of living and keeps us in a state of living paycheck to paycheck, even 20 years into our careers. Now, the challenge with the Goldfish syndrome is that on top of these scenarios, it also sneaks up on us in other ways. It's signing up for one more media subscription, one more children's activity for the kids, upgrading your phone, all done without reviewing our finances first to see the overall impact. Now, I want to be really clear. It's not that you cannot buy that motorcycle or the boat. It's just that you need to be aware of the impact so you can make smart money decisions. There's a road to a tipping point early in your career where you have to buy that new car. It's okay to want to buy the new house to get to a basic standard of living. But once you reach that basic standard of living, it's time to implement savvy money habit number 6, which is the 50-50 rule. The 50-50 rule, as you receive increases in your income through pay raises, bonuses, commission checks, business profit, whatever, you're going to take 50% of that money and put it towards your retirement or wealth building accounts. This is the habit that helps you exponentially increase your wealth building savings on top of what you're saving each month with savvy habit number 1. The other 50%, you get to spend on whatever you want, such as your financial goals, with one rule. You cannot spend it on anything that will create a bill. You cannot increase your cost of living. So, going back to the previous discussion, you can buy that motorcycle if that 50% bonus is enough to buy the motorcycle outright. What you cannot do is you cannot use it as a down payment for a motorcycle that then incurs a monthly bill, because now you have just raised your ongoing cost of living. You can quite certainly take that money, put it into a savings account, and then add to it, making it a goal that when I have enough money, I want to buy a motorcycle outright. We're fixating on motorcycles because I happen to like riding motorcycles. So that's something that really resonates with me. But the idea is that the 50% rule is the embodiment of savvy living. It helps you to build a financial foundation while enjoying the journey. This is really powerful in that it lets you enjoy the improvement in your life as you make more money without affecting your standard of living, without affecting your current bill paying capacity. The ultimate goal is to hit a point sooner rather than later where your cost of living continues to decrease as your income increases. This way, you're capturing a significant amount of that surplus for both your retirement and your short-term goals like vacations or whatever hobbies or whatever interests you have. Again, if you're already retired, both the Goldfish syndrome and the 50-50 rule still apply, but in a slightly different way. We've seen newly retired clients who now have both the time and the money to do the things that they put off during their working career become very enthusiastic in their spending once they retire. They buy the RV, they take that trip to Europe, they remodel the kitchen, all in the first year of their retirement. Now, this can really hit an investment portfolio hard. We're not saying you can't do these things, just that you need to plan them out to align with your retirement spending plans. Spread them out in a way that makes sense. Spread your trips out over several years so that you can enjoy them rather than cramming them all one right after the other, and you can't even tell if this is Tuesday, I must be in Belgium. Don't do the remodel until you come back from your trips. Maybe you're getting a bulk distribution or a windfall payment in your retirement from your plans. Again, you're not going to put that 50% away for the long-term goals because you're already in your long-term, but rather towards specific shorter-term goals. The idea of the 50-50 rule for both retirees and for those who are still working is to give you a breath to stop and think about how to best use that money now and in the future, rather than just spending it out of impulse. Now, of all the savvy habits that we have, this next one is one of Melissa's favorites. Actually, if you ask her, she'll tell you that they're all her favorite. But there's something empowering about this next one that makes you feel you're in control of your spending and your time. Savvy habit number 7 is to pay all of your bills on payday before spending a penny of your paycheck or distribution on anything else. Now, you've already automated your savings with savvy habit number 1, so you've taken care of paying yourself first. Next, you turn your focus to paying your bills, your financial obligations. What are some of the benefits of paying your bills on payday? First of all, it ensures that the money to pay your bills is available. You just got paid, you know the money's there. It eliminates late fees, which is another great waste of money. It will help strengthen your credit score because you're paying all your bills regularly, and that has a lot of advantage. And lastly, and most importantly, is it gives you peace of mind because now you know right after you got paid, all your bills have been paid, your financial obligations are set. Again, make it a ritual so that it will keep the process simple and enjoyable, and it becomes a habit. How do you do that? Well, before payday, ensure that all of your bills are in one place. If you still get paper copies of your bills, gather them together, make sure that they're right there with your checkbook or however you're going to pay your bills. If you're paying bills electronically online, make sure you have your computer files open to show here are all the bills that are due this month. You know what you're doing with. Second, make sure that you've been staying on top of savvy habit number 2 and you're always keeping track of your spending. You don't want any surprises when you sit down to pay your bills. If you've been tracking your spending, then again, you know how much money you have available, and then you just got paid, so you know what your income is. You can go ahead and pay the bills. Once again, try to pay your bills first thing in the morning with as little distraction as possible. The later in the day you do it, the easier it is to procrastinate. Over the course of any pay period, You also have two financial needs that go along with your financial obligations. And those financial needs include paying for gas or transit pass so you can get transport to go do the things you need to do, and buying food so that you have food to eat. So in addition to paying your bills on payday, this is also a great time to fill your car with gas and to purchase groceries. By making both of these purchases on payday or as close to payday as possible, you're ensuring that these crucial items, your financial needs, are taken care of. Now, the bonus to purchasing your groceries and gas on payday is that in one day, you've taken care of 3 of your biggest weekly or biweekly chores: paid your bills, put gas in your car, bought food. You've procured the items that are most crucial. Also, now that you have those 3 things done, you know exactly how much discretionary income you have for the rest of your pay period to spend. Just think, how great will it feel knowing that you've taken care of all of your important responsibilities and that the money you have left over is yours to spend as you please. This is the habit that helps you spend on the small things you want on a day-to-day basis, your discretionary items, without negatively impacting your finances. It is powerful. I'd also like to add that this is the one habit we continue to receive email from former clients or people who have attended our presentations years later, bragging about how they just executed this habit and how good they feel about it.
All right, so from here, I'd like to jump off and introduce you to our next habit, which is number 8. And this really comes from the perspective that we have a tendency to spend money on autopilot and not think about our purchasing decisions. So this next habit is really about becoming conscious of what it is that you're purchasing and thinking through how you're going to use that item. And it's simply know when to invest and when to bargain shop. This can really come up if you're trying to be extra careful about your money. It's possible that you automatically reach for the cheapest item, whether it's of the quality you really need or even the color that you want. Unfortunately, cheaper quality items may not last as long as you need, or if it's in a color you don't want, your satisfaction with that item might be low. So be willing to think through each of your purchases so you can decide if you should invest or you should bargain shop. No matter how much available income that you have, this is something that is such an excellent habit to embed. Now, again, be mindful and think through those purchases. You can ask yourself, what do you need it for? If you live in San Francisco, near where Kevin and I live, and you have a postage stamp of a front yard, it makes sense to find an inexpensive old-fashioned push lawnmower. However, if you're like my mom, who up until recently lived on 3 acres, 1.5 acres of which was grass, you're going to do as she did, and you're going to invest in a quality riding lawnmower with a very comfortable seat and a cup holder, because you're going to be spending a tremendous amount of time riding it. Another question to ask yourself is, how long do you need it to last? Using clothes as an example, is the item you're looking at a foundational piece for your wardrobe, or is it a fun item that you're going to wear on your next trip to Vegas, right? Rule of thumb, invest in the foundational wardrobe piece because you're going to be wearing it regularly. Bargain shop for the Vegas wear because you'll likely only wear it once. The real moral of this story is don't be cheap because it can cost you in the long run. All right, and the final habit that we would like to introduce you to, savvy habit number 9, is to spend money on the things you want. Spend money on the things you want. And right now you may be thinking, well, of course I spend money on the things I want. And yet we get distracted from our goals every single day at Target, at Costco, BJ's, Sam's Club, Walmart, Amazon Prime. Just every single day we're going off the rails. And in his book, The Power of Habit, that Kevin mentioned earlier, the author Charles Duhigg, he gives many examples of just how far retailers go to get us to part with our money. From the way stores are lit, the colors, oops, there it is, the colors used throughout the store, even where items are placed in the store. But there's one very interesting topic that he covers that I truly found fascinating, and that is that scientists have confirmed that willpower is like a muscle, and it gets fatigued as you implement it throughout the day, and then it replenishes while you sleep. So like me, you may have experienced this before when trying to change your eating habits, right? You might do great in the morning, lunch, no problem. By late afternoon, you might begin to start to struggle. You persevere during dinner, and then come 8 o'clock, you're standing with the freezer door open with a spoon in one hand and a tub of ice cream in the other hand. It's not that you're a bad person. It's just that you ran out of willpower by the end of the day. This same experience happens at retail stores, and retailers do, as I mentioned, they set up their stores on purpose, understanding the science of willpower. It's why TVs and big ticket items are at the front of those big box stores like Costco. And without even realizing it, you execute a large amount of your willpower at the beginning of your shopping trip by walking past those TVs, right? And then as you're going along the store, by the time that you get to the register, you look down in your cart and you realize for everything that's in there, you could have bought a large screen TV, right? As those impulse items that you picked up while you were going along. The same thing happens at the grocery store. Now, you may have had the experience before of walking into a store at the same time as maybe a mom or a dad and their 3 kids. Now let's take the example of the mom with her 3 kids, right? So the minute they walk in the store, those kids are on her, right? Mom, can I have this? Mom, can I have that? It's so annoying that you're trying to skip a couple aisles. You're willing to leave the store without those items because you're trying to get out of earshot because it is so annoying. But something happens as she starts to get to the final aisles of the store and you realize that she hasn't given in yet. You go from being annoyed to starting to root for her because she's going to make it. And then she gets to the checkout. And what's at the checkout? We've got candy, right? And where is it? It's on the right side because 90% of the population is right-handed, and it's at kids' eye level. And that's when she gives in, and you are dumbfounded. The door to the store is right there. There's sunlight streaming through the door. She was so close to getting out of there without caving to those kids. The next time you see that mom or dad at the grocery store, instead of judging them, I want you to give them a hug because they just simply ran out of willpower. It happens to the best of us. Now, the good news is that willpower, like a muscle, can be strengthened over time. Meanwhile, if you find yourself running out of willpower when shopping, if that story resonated with you personally, then one easy fix is to adjust your shopping schedule to earlier in the day when you're not exhausted. So instead of going to the grocery store after a lot of errands, try going in the morning or very early on a weekend day. If that doesn't work for you, then Kevin and I found with clients is well worth researching the price of grocery delivery services to see if it's cheaper than shopping when your willpower is exhausted. Okay. Another way to ensure you spend on the things you want is to remind yourself of your goals. Okay. Silly as it may sound, keeping photos of the trip that you want to take, or even a car that you want to buy, or a motorcycle in Kevin's case that you want to buy, having those items close at hand where you're going to see them regularly, it keeps them top of mind. It helps you to become more purposeful in your spending, to choose wiser. So you can post pictures of those items on your refrigerator, on your computer desktop, or anywhere that you're going to regularly see those items. You can even keep a picture in your wallet. That's something that I regularly do. Whatever our next trip is, I've got a picture of it in my wallet. Keeps me focused. One of the most powerful habits that I've actually learned from a client, so that a client taught me, is the Sunday morning shopping cart habit. So I learned this from a client I worked with a couple of years ago, who was a professor at a very prominent university. And at the time he was working on a project outside of his schoolwork. And as part of his research, he was ordering books on Amazon, and he realized that he was spending $100 to $200 a week, which was an unsustainable amount of money. So we decided to cut back on the purchases, but he had to make sure it wouldn't negatively affect his research. So after some thought, he created the Sunday morning shopping cart ritual. So throughout the week, he finds titles that he wants to purchase. He puts them in his cart, but doesn't buy them yet. Then every Sunday morning, he sits down with a cup of coffee and reviews his cart and decides which books to purchase. And there are several reasons why this is such a powerful habit. Number one, he sees the total amount of just how much money he would have spent, and that knowledge makes him pickier. He's able to see how many of his books he planned to purchase crossed over or were practically duplicates. And then his ritual entails reviewing that cart first thing in the morning when he still has plenty of willpower and is able to make better decisions than at night when his willpower has fatigued. This is one of my favorite habits to pass on to clients that want to streamline their online spending. Being able to see that accumulation of what they would have spent with one click here, one click there throughout the week just helps them make better spending decisions. All right, and there's one more tool around the goal of spending money on the things that you want, being purposeful in your spending, that I want to introduce to you before we wrap up. And that is to create a spending book. This is a tool that Kevin and I have been teaching for close to a decade now. It is incredibly powerful. And simply what a spending book is, it's just a blank notebook that you can use to list the items that you want to purchase. A lot of our clients will actually use an app on their phone, but I'm tactile. I like to actually write things down. What a spending book does is it helps you stay focused and ensure that you're spending your money on the things that you want, rather than getting distracted by what's catching your attention while shopping. So when you think about something that you'd like to purchase, right, or that you need to purchase, like a pair of boots, a casserole dish, you're going to write it down in your spending book. And a spending book is also an excellent place to keep the details of the purchases that you need to make, such as the dimensions of a frame, for example. Now, we know to make a grocery list when we go to the grocery store to ensure that we purchase the food we need rather than getting trapped by impulse purchases. A spending book is just like a grocery list, but for the other stores that you shop at. So just as you would at the grocery store, you're only purchasing those items you intentionally want to buy, the items in your spending book. Now, the process also helps you take better advantage of sales. So before heading out to your favorite store, you're going to visit their website to check their weekly sales ads to see if any of the items that are on sale happen to coordinate with the items in your spending book. If so, it's a perfect time to pick that item up. Now, one of the things that Kevin and I truly love about the spending book, and we believe one of its most powerful purposes, is to use it for things like the movies and concerts you want to go to, for the restaurants that you want to visit, to the places that you want to go on a road trip, or the activities that you want to participate in. It's a very, very powerful tool for living a very purposeful life. You're literally writing the book for the life that you want to live. And I'm just continue to be in love with the idea of it. I'm going to leave you with one last thing before we go to questions. And that is that as a culture, we need to get back into the process of making conscious spending decisions. Again, not from the perspective of being on a budget or scarcity, but from the perspective of what we choose to spend our money on and what we choose to bring into our lives. No matter what stage of life you're currently in, becoming purposeful with where you spend your time and where you spend your money, that significantly increases your quality of life. And with that, we'll open it up, see if anybody has any questions.
Kevin and Melissa, I want to thank you. This was an incredible teaching hour of how we do better with our spending habits. I don't see any questions right now, but I have a couple, or a question and a comment. So the first question, in one of your slides, you were talking about saving 20%, and with everybody that still has a job, are we talking about pre-tax 20%, post-tax 20%? I'm an accountant, so I like to know what.
Yeah.
What's your recommendation? I mean, obviously the 20% of pre-tax is pretty high, but I mean, just to get things rolling, seems like post-tax would be even easier to start and then just increment up. But
it's usually a combination of both, right? So in a traditional sense of work, you would have somebody, the ideal is that they're saving 15% of their income into their 401k, right?
right.
And then from there, you could tack on an additional 5% or work towards getting to that additional 5%. Quite frankly, as Kevin said, it really depends on the client and their particular situation. And Kevin, do you want to jump in on that?
I think that you really did hit the nail on the head. The real key is that that 20% is a goal that really does depend a lot on along in individual needs and such. So it's preferable to save 20% pre-tax because that's a larger amount, obviously.
Sure.
But then it really just becomes a question of what can you do and sustain? Because again, the biggest thing we want to avoid is people who are saving too aggressively and then end up backsliding. That's incredibly demoralizing. We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I think that depends on, stages of your life. Like,
Exactly.
My kids were young, probably not as expensive as they got older, schooling, in college. So I actually, the one thing that I'd love to implement, and I hope I can do this, is the Sunday morning shopping cart. The way I need to implement that is I need to get my Amazon password out of my teenage daughter's phones because they love the one click, right?
Oh, it's genius.
It's the ultimate impulse buy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I see, I think, Melissa, you said it early on. We are on a first name basis with the people that drop off our packages, because we don't shop anymore. It's so easy. And in this pandemic, it was just insane. Like almost every day I first started working at home, I'm sitting where I could see my front door and I could see the guy coming every day. I had to move so I didn't see him because I didn't want him even there. Yeah. So this Sunday morning shopping cart is really interesting to me because I'd love to be able to just see what my daughters and my wife put in the cart and show them, like on a Sunday, that if they would have hit one click on all of these, we would have spent $400. And they don't even think of it that way. They just saw a $20 purchase, a $30 purchase, and it's unconscious.
And it's done intentionally by the retailers. And we're not anti-retail by any sense of the word, but there's a slippery slope that they've created that they're taking to the bank.
One of the things that Amazon really started and perfected, and everybody does it now, is that whole concept of, oh, you bought this, you may like this.
Oh yeah.
And again, with that one click, that can just go crazy. So that's another case of just giving you a pause before you get on this roller coaster of madly clicking and buying these things. Again, we're not saying don't do it. We're just saying stop, think, be purposeful, and decide, is that really what you want to spend your money on?
Guys, it permeates everywhere. So we share, as a family, we share one Amazon account. Mm-hmm. I know what they're looking at because the next time I go into my Facebook account, it's looking at like a fire pit, something, I'm like, so I'll say to my wife, like, oh, you're thinking about buying a fire pit? She, how did you know that? I said, because Facebook told me that you did something on Amazon. So the psychological things that the retailers do today is amazing from their standpoint to build their sales.
Yep.
But you guys are teaching us how to avoid those psychological tricks. The right-handed person. I'm a left-handed person, so I'm probably not grabbing that candy. But it's amazing to hear you talk about these things and how to avoid those things that the retailers are doing to increase their sales.
They're in business. It's what they have to do. And I would also add, and Kevin and I, we keep telling about how we teach personal finance from a lifestyle perspective. This is really the first session in an entire series that we do focusing on these different areas of our life. But there's an entire session that we do on the result of those purchases, which is the clutter in your home.
Yeah.
Right. And then we don't want to be at home. So we feel like we need a vacation or we got to go to get out to the movies. So it's
go to the mall to buy more stuff.
It's a cycle.
One big vicious circle. Well, I'm monitoring the chat box and there's still no questions. So I'm going to, it was an incredible hour, as like I said. And for our participants, you'll see if there's anything you want to ask these, both of them directly. You can see their emails right in front of you and the telephone number. I'm
Please
just
do.
real quick, just I want to thank everybody for attending a seminar. This was a perfect ending to a 2-day long financial symposium. Again, want to thank you guys for putting us into the savvy life. And all of our presentations will be posted. All of these recordings will be posted on our website at friendslifecare.org. You will receive a 5-question survey afterwards. If you would please complete that, we'd appreciate it. It'll give us feedback on how to improve this in the future. And then you'll receive an email within 24 hours to tell you exactly where everything is posted. I want to again thank everybody. I want to thank Melissa and Kevin for their time today. It was just a really good hour and gave me some tricks that hopefully I can save some money and everybody on the call can save some money in some way. I appreciate it. And I want to wish everybody and wish everybody a great day and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.